revealed. The sinister secrets of Tacoma's haunted mall. No night guard should ever discover the night air in Tacoma's Evergreen mall hung thick with a chilling dread, a suffocating blanket that stifled even the bravest souls. Sarah, a 33-year-old single mother, stood alone in the hollow shell of a once bustling center. Flickering fluorescent lights overhead cast menacing shadows that danced like phantoms across the cracked linoleum, each flutter a whispered reminder of lost laughter and forgotten shopping sprees. Her heart raced as she reminded herself that the haunting past was nothing more than a memory. Or was it? In the beginning, her shifts settled into grim routines. She patrolled the eerily quiet hallways, where the sound of her footsteps echoed ominously, melding into the whispering silence. But there was something strange lurking beneath the surface. The first whispers pierced the quiet one night, delicate sounds that seemed to weave around her ears like a taunting melody. They drew closer, then vanished into thin air before she could decipher their meaning. Desperation gnawed at her, a familiar hunger for reassurance that masked the growing unease inside. She shrugged it off, clinging to the rationality that had kept her afloat in this life of struggle. Yet, as nights wore on, events spiraled into a macabre reality. Broken mirrors reflected twisted images, faces of long-forgotten children grinning maliciously from the depths of obscure memories. Who were they? Why did it feel like they were looking back at her with a knowing gaze? The stories of vanished kids whispered by her neighbors surfaced in her mind, layers of lost innocence mingling with the suffocating dread that enveloped her. The mall, once a sanctuary, now felt like a mausoleum, bearing witness to unresolved tragedies. On that fateful night, a subdued light flickered above, revealing a barely concealed stairway spiraling down into an abyss of darkness beneath the mall. Compelled by a mix of fear and curiosity, Sarah descended, a dusty chill crawling up her spine. She stumbled upon a musty basement, the air thick with an unsettling tension. Crooked family portraits lined the damp walls, their painted smiles wrenching tears from deep within her. They were too familiar, deep-rooted connections of grief binding her to them. As her heartbeat thundered in her ears, she lost her breath, trapped between understanding and horror. A loud crash echoed through the empty corridors, shattering her fragile composure. Panic surged in waves. Cold sweat dripped down her back as she felt unseen eyes press against her neck, an icy grip tightening around her throat. Flee, or stand her ground? The weight of her responsibilities collided violently with the pull of terror. What horrors were lurking in these shadows? There was something sinister lurking here, and the past wasn't ready to let go. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Sarah stood there, the basement seemed to whisper to her, a voice woven through the shadows, urging her to unveil the truth. Was the mall haunted by lost souls, or something far more malevolent? With dread turning into determination, she felt herself drawn deeper into the suffocating darkness of what had been hidden away. Would her unyielding need to understand break the chains of silence, or would the truth possess her, dragging her down into a nightmare from which she could never escape? The air around her charged with a palpable fear as she clutched at the walls, bracing herself for whatever lay ahead. Her journey into the abyss of terror had only just begun. The darkness pressed in on Sarah, wrapping around her like a cold shroud. The whispering grew louder, more insistent, as though the very walls were trying to communicate. Her breath quickened, and she tried to shake off the sensation of being watched. She reached for her flashlight, its beam flickering uncertainly, mirroring the turmoil within her. Shadows stretched and danced across the basement, twisting into shapes that pulsed with dread. Footsteps echoed from above, a faint sound creeping down through the abyss, pulsating with a sickening rhythm. Someone or something was nearby. Panic clawed at her throat. Did she dare to call for help? Or would that just invite whatever was in the shadows to her? She bit her lip, tasting the metallic tang of fear. Then she saw them. Glimmers from the dusty floor, reflecting the flashlight's beam. Broken toys scattered across the ground, a doll with one glassy eye, a teddy bear with torn fur, and tiny shoes that should not belong here. These were not just remnants. They were symbols of vanished innocence, cruel reminders of happiness that had long since faded. With every step forward, deeper into the nightmare, her thoughts turned toward the stories, the whispers of children gone, lost in the very mall she now patrolled each night. Clutching her flashlight like a lifeline, Sarah scanned the room. The portraits on the walls seemed to sway, their painted eyes glistening as if they absorbed her fear. "Who are you?" she dared to ask, her voice trembling and thin. The basement answered her only with silence, profound and suffocating. Suddenly, a sound sliced through the stillness, a high-pitched giggle that echoed off the damp walls, both playful and sinister. It twinkled like chimes but felt like an icy stab. She should run, but her feet remained planted in the old, gritty floor, drawn by an allure she couldn't comprehend. "Help us! Help us!" The voice cooed again, each word dripping with a strange sweetness laced with malice. Her heart sank, the weight of her responsibility as a mother anchoring her in place. "Where are you?" she whispered, fighting to keep her voice steady. The giggling intensified, swirling around her like a cyclone. A shadow skittered just out of view, slipping through the beam of light, barely there but hauntingly real. The corners of the basement became darker, thicker, as if the shadows were gathering to blanket her senses. Not knowing why she felt compelled to act, Sarah found herself stepping toward the darkest corner of the room. There, amidst the debris, a small door barely ajar beckoned her. It was a crawl space, its narrow entrance coated in cobwebs that clung like fingers across her hands. The whispers strengthened, a cacophony of laughter and cries urging her forward, a tug of desperation that felt both foreign and familiar. What awaited her inside? Would the truth release her from the agony of uncertainty or bind her forever to the horrors of her discovery? With each moment of hesitation, the fear bubbled within her, growing, suffocating. Should she go? Sarah pressed her palm against the door, the rough wood feeling alive beneath her touch. Just as she steeled herself to push it open, the flickering light above gave way, a blackout engulfed her in total darkness. What would happen next? The dwellers of the shadows were restless, and Sarah felt the air around her change, heavier, expectant. Alone in the darkness, a new realization dawned. She was not hunting for answers. She was the hunt, and the darkness was hungry. The darkness wrapped Sarah tightly, as if it had a life of its own. Every sense tingled with danger. The silence was almost deafening. She stood still, heart hammering, trying to comprehend the shift around her. Was it just her imagination, or did the shadows seem to breathe? A new sound slithered through the air, low, almost imperceptible at first but steadily increasing in volume. It was a soft whisper, nonsensical yet urgent, mingling with an eerie hum that strummed at the edges of her sanity. She took a shaky breath, the air suddenly thick and suffocating. "What do you want?" she called, her voice louder than she intended, fear infusing every syllable. The only reply was the oppressive silence that swallowed her words. The small door loomed before her, a gaping mouth ready to swallow her whole. Tentatively, she pushed it further open, a reluctant creak echoing through the shadows. Cold air seeped out, brushing against her skin like a warning. The flashlight sputtered back to life but only illuminated a few feet ahead of her, revealing just the edges of clutter, more discarded toys, a broken bicycle, and crumpled papers that looked like long-forgotten secrets begging to be uncovered. As she stepped into the crawl space, an unexpected chill swept through her. It wasn't just the temperature. It was a palpable sense of dread. The whispers grew louder, drawing her deeper into the recess. She crawled forward, heart pounding in her ears, her instincts screaming at her to turn back. But the pull was irresistible. "Help us!" The faint, sing-song voice lured again, this time unmistakably coming from within the crawl space. Suddenly, a sharp scraping sound resonated through the tight space, a heavy thud that made her blood freeze. The light flickered, those playful giggles morphing into frenzied screeches. "They're coming." The thought surged through her mind. She wasn't alone. Terror surged within her. She needed to get out, but the way back was now shrouded in blackness, an impenetrable wall rising to snatch her away from safety. Panic twisted into a knot in her stomach as adrenaline shot through her veins. The beams of her flashlight shivered and danced, flickering wildly as if sensing some invisible force lurking in the deep. And that moment, Sarah glimpsed something just at the edges of her sight. Shadowy figures clambering, tiny forms with gaunt faces twisted in agony. They were children, their eyes wide with sorrow, mouths stretching into unnatural smiles that sent chills down her spine. They surrounded her, trapped in a loop of despair, drawn to her presence like moths to an open flame. "Join us," they whispered, their voices a haunting lullaby echoing between the walls. Breathing heavily, Sarah's thoughts raced. This had to end. She was here to protect children, not to succumb to whatever darkness claimed this place. "No," she shouted, forcing herself back toward the door, pushing against the suffocating fear wrapping around her. But as she turned, the passageway behind her shifted, collapsing into a wall of shadows, sealing her fate. "Help us!" The chorus of voices grew desperate, pressing in closer. She felt fingers tugging at her clothes, cold and clammy. Then, in the haunting depths of the shadows, a figure appeared, tall and lithe, its silhouette grotesque and deranged. It pointed a bony finger at her, and a chilling laugh rolled through the dark. "You can't escape, Sarah. You've become one of us." Terror seized her like a vice. The figure stepped closer, the vivid outline sharpening in the dim light, and she felt the ground beneath her tremble, the very foundation of her sanity cracking. Was this the end? And in that moment, the darkness surged forward, hungry for her soul. What had she unwittingly awakened? The shadows writhed and twisted, closing in, blocking any hint of escape. Sarah's heart raced, pounding so hard she thought it might burst from her chest. She stumbled back, trying to keep the flashlight steady, but it flickered again, the beam dancing wildly, as if it were as terrified as she was. "Help us!" The whispers turned frantic, almost derisive now, chilling her to the bone. Each plea lapped at her mind, gnawing away at her resolve. She had to fight. She couldn't let herself be trapped like them. Not here. Not now. Without thinking, Sarah bolted sideways, desperate to find another way out of the darkness. The children's forms loomed, their ghastly grins haunted. The taller figure seemed to follow her, gliding closer with fluid movements, its voice dripping with glee. "There's no way out. You're one of us now. We always find a way." Her breath came in short gasps, the air thick with something sinister. She fought the urge to scream. Instead, she crawled through the shadows, searching for anything, an opening, a light, a sign of life. The whispers grew deafening, surrounding her, mixing with the scrape of chilling laughter that sliced through the darkness. Then she felt it warm, sticky, pooling around her hands. She froze, pulling her flashlight up to examine the source. Blood dark and thick caked along a jagged edge of a broken toy. Panic surged through her. She was in a graveyard of forgotten memories, drenched in the remnants of despair. "Join us!" echoed in a chorus, drawing closer as the figure melted into the shadows. It was like the very walls were alive, feeding off her fear, shifting as she moved. She had to get something, anything, to fight back. Her fingers brushed against a rusty metal fragment. Felt wrong. Sharp edges dug into her palm, but it gave her a flicker of hope. She grasped it tightly and turned back, eyes wide, adrenaline clawing at her senses. "Stay away!" she screamed, her voice piercing the air, shaking with raw power. Before her stood the towering figure, laughter churning in its throat. But it wasn't just glee. It morphed into something darker, a maddening, distorted sound vibrating through the crawlspace. Its face twisted in grotesque joy, as if savoring her fear. "Fear feeds us," it intoned, a terrible echo that resonated in her bones. In a surge of instinct, Sarah lunged, driving the jagged metal towards the figure. It recoiled, the laughter cutting off abruptly. For a moment, The silence felt almost tangible, heavy in the crowded darkness. She moved forward, humidity clinging to her skin, and the air filled with a peculiar scent, like burnt copper. That it was a fleeting advantage. The children, those ghastly faces, surged back, eyes blazing with fury. Their voices rose again, no longer whispers, but a cacophony of outrage. "You will pay." She stumbled past them, their thin fingers grasping at her hair, her clothes, and whatever skin they could clutch. She could see a glimmer of light now, far ahead, her only chance. With a final push, Sarah unleashed every bit of her energy, her breath a tempest, fighting against the grip of despair binding her. But as she reached for that light, something snagged her foot, pulling her down with an unyielding force. The laughter returned, louder, more maniacal, bouncing from wall to wall. "Not yet, dear Sarah," teased the shadow, rising like a dark tide around her. "Not yet." In a last desperate attempt, she swung the metal shard wildly, desperate for freedom. What would happen if she didn't escape? Panicking clawed at her mind as shadows melded with her own, trying to deflect her fight. She gazed into the light, nearly close enough to touch, and the darkness trembled around her. Would she make it? And just as she thought maybe, just maybe, she could break free, a cold voice whispered directly in her ear, "You are beyond saving." The darkness surged, waiting and watching. What was about to be unleashed? The world flipped as Sarah hit the ground, the metal shards slipping from her fingers. The jagged surface carved into her skin, drawing fresh blood, but she barely felt it. The laughter crescendoed, twisting into a cacophony of jeers that wrapped around her like a suffocating blanket. Desperation clawed at her throat. She grasped at the floor, fighting the pull of unseen hands, the very fabric of the darkness. She could see the light flickering, pulsating, just beyond her reach. It beckoned. Was it hope or a cruel joke? "Join us," they chanted again, the haunting whispers becoming a chorus that bounced off the walls, dragging her deeper into madness. Join us, Eno," she shouted, terror fueling her, igniting a spark of defiance. Sarah braced herself and dragged herself forward, clawing at the twisted remnants of toys and decay, pushing against the growing weight of the shadows closing in on her. Suddenly, the ground vibrated beneath her, a low hum resonating like the thrumming of a drum. The shadows flickered, unleashing a surge that shot through the void. For a fleeting moment, she felt the embrace of something warm, a breath, a whisper, and then it vanished, leaving her alone again in the cold, clammy darkness. In that moment of vulnerability, a new voice crawled from the depths of the gloom. It was different, smooth and inviting, yet laced with an undercurrent of malice. "They are wrong, you know. You are not beyond saving. Who are you?" she gasped, glaring into the shadows, the feeling of dread curling around her again. "I am what they fear. I am the requiem of souls," it murmured, and the walls flickered, revealing slivers of the once vibrant mall that had fallen into despair. "They have felt pain for a long time. You can help them, embrace them, set them free." Goosebumps erupted down her arms. As the figure stepped closer, the laughter of children grew hushed, each childish face contorted with longing, their expressions shifting to something more sinister, their eyes now bewildered but hungry. "No," she yelled. "I want to be part of this. I want to." But her hands slipped deeper into the bloodied floor where the remnants of their anger lay, latching on to her. The malice pulsed within her, urging her to embody the darkness, to lash out and join the tormented chorus as the shadows throbbed. She closed her eyes to block out the pleading gazes. "Fight," she told herself fiercely, but the darkness offered its own insistence. "Why not surrender?" The deep voice hissed behind her. "What could they give you that we can't?" A frigid fear settled in her gut, and she kicked and pushed against the ground, the weight growing heavier. Her mind flashed with images of her life outside, bright lights, laughter, the smell of freedom. But those memories began to fade, blocked by the encroaching darkness. "Light, find the light," urged a small voice that burst through the raucous din, shimmering like a beacon of hope. It felt like that very moment she expressed her fear. She had forgotten her own strength. Sarah pressed forward, the metal shard now inches from the ground. Mustering every ounce of will, she grabbed it again, feeling the sharpness bring clarity back to her mind. Her heart raced, a desperate rhythm echoing in her ears. "Let me go," she shouted, a ferocious energy surging through her veins. Then the shadows recoiled, a collective gasp breaking through the noise. For a horrifying moment, she felt an emptiness as if pieces of her were stolen away, hollow and fearful. That dark voice chuckled, growing louder. "You cannot escape your fate, but in that very darkness." The glimmer of light pulsed. The shadows shuddered, flaring. That shimmering warmth pushed against the coldness, igniting her courage. Could she break free? The struggle intensified, the cacophony above her raging, no longer whispers but screams of rejection. Shadows twisted around her legs, tugging and pulling as she fought upward. With a final surge, she launched herself toward that flicker, the shard glinting in the dim light, ready to sever her ties with despair. But at that moment, just before reaching the light, an icy grip clutched her heart. Squeezing tighter, everything went silent. "Let the truth unfold," the voice purred, a sinister promise on the edge of her hearing. What would the truth reveal? Sarah's heart hammered in her chest as the chilling grip tightened, and an unnatural stillness enveloped her. The world spun into an abyss of silence, no laughter, no whispers. Just an oppressive weight bearing down on her like a looming shadow, smothering her spirit. "Embrace the dark," the voice echoed, as if it trailed behind her, a haunting murmur. Fear curled around her, squeezing like a vice, but her fingers instinctively tightened around the shard. The jagged edge warmed to her touch, almost alive, almost aware, with an eruption of renewed determination. She pulled the shard closer. "I will fight," she whispered, her breath uneven. The icy grip twisted, but she summoned every ounce of willpower, channeling her fear into a fierce desire for escape. As she fought against the darkness, the light ahead distorted, elongating into a narrow tunnel that twisted and churned with the malevolent energy around her. Suddenly, shadows slithered rapidly, recoiling like a wounded beast. Echoes of muffled cries rose around her, creating an unsettling symphony of despair that clawed at her sanity. She took a deep breath, the tang of iron filling her nostrils, and launched herself forward. The darkness snapped at her heels, grasping, pulling. Each step felt like wading through molasses, the ground sticky beneath her feet. She could feel the flickering light drawing nearer, like a lighthouse amid a storm, lighting her path. Yet, the looming figure was behind her, ever present, whispering sinister promises of power and release. "Join them, Sarah. Let them be part of you," the voice crooned seductively, floating through the swirling darkness. "You can't run forever. The darkness is inside you now, waiting to be unleashed." "No," she shouted, the vibrant defiance spilling forth. It was as much a declaration against her fate as it was a plea to herself. "I am not like you." Light danced just within her grasp, pulsating like a heartbeat. As she neared it, she could make out fragile outlines of forgotten memories. Bustling stores and laughing children, moments of happiness frozen in time. A ghostly image of herself flitted past, smiling, free. But the darkness hissed, spitting bullets of fear through her veins. "Look at what you leave behind. You think you can escape?" Sarah's resolve fractured, her thoughts spinning like leaves caught in a whirlwind. The tug-of-war between shadows and light spun her into a frenzy. The warmth of hope flickered like a candle about to extinguish, but deep within, a flickering ember remained, the will to survive. "Not today," she yelled, mustering strength she didn't know she had. With one last surge, she charged into the light, the shard raised high like a weapon. The shadows howled in protest, voices melding into an anguished symphony. When she broke through, everything erupted into blinding brilliance. Colors engulfed her senses, and the laughter returned, now a harmonious melody. But it was twisted, mocking her effort. A mirror, a reflection of her darkest fears erupted before her. Faces etched in pain. "Welcome back," echoed the familiar sinister voice, now a reverberating chorus from the phantoms surrounding her. "What did you do?" She recoiled, reality unraveling. The warmth faded to a cool chill across her skin, panic rising as each face around her shifted into a grotesque expression of despair. This is your truth, Sarah, are you willing to face it? That cold grip returned around her heart, squeezing tighter, more desperate, as her scream echoed, swallowed by the haunting laughter that now embodied her very existence. As the last remnant of light flickered and dimmed, she finally understood she had not escaped the darkness. It was her true nature, and the question lingered like smoke in the air. What would she become in the darkness that remained? The laughter faded, but the oppressive atmosphere clung to Sarah like a second skin. The mirror of fractured memories hung in the air before her, grotesque faces swirling in a dance of despair. Each visage tore at her insides, gaping mouths forming silent screams, each one a reminder of the pain she tried to escape. She stumbled back, her breath hitching, a newfound urgency pushing her forward. Face it, the voices echoed, mingling like a chorus of damned souls. Shadows writhed at the edges of her vision, teasing, enticing. Anxiety rose like bile in her throat, and with it the terrifying realization that she wasn't merely facing her fears, she was becoming them. With every heartbeat, the chill of recognition settled deeper in her bones. The faces morphed, and she saw familiar features: a friend long lost, a loved one betrayed, even her own reflection, twisted and distorted by regret. They were all tethered to her, to the darkness that whispered promises of power and release. "No, you're not a part of me," she screamed into the void, but the darkness only chuckled, a low, reverberating sound that seeped into her mind. It was a chilling confirmation that they were inescapable. The shard pulsed in her hand, thrumming with a life of its own. "Use it," the shadows urged, their voices a symphony of desperation and delight. "Become one with us, Sarah. It is your fate." "No." She clenched her teeth, her heart racing, adrenaline coursing through her veins. She was losing ground, slipping further into their grasp. Instinctively, she raised the shard, its jagged edge shimmering with a strange light as she felt a surge of energy burst forth. Fleeting images of herself flashed in bursts of vision, strong, unyielding, an avenger against injustice. The stronger she clutched the shard, the clearer those images became, pushing back against the waves of despair trying to drown her. "Fight back!" a voice screamed inside her, the sound breaking through the heavy fog of hopelessness. Stepping toward the mirror, the reflections warped but didn't shatter. "You can't erase us," one visage declared, a shadowy finger pointing accusingly. "You belong here just like us." A deep breath. Sarah concentrated, every ounce of her being focused outward. "I choose my own fate." She lunged forward, plunging the shard into the mirror. A blinding light erupted, illuminating the darkness, the figures screaming in protest as they clawed at their twisted reality. Flashes of light burst through, piercing shadows and revealing more darkened corners of this warped realm. The laughter faded into blood-curdling shrieks. Reality flickered like an old TV screen, the boundaries of her own existence splintering. In the blink of an eye, she found herself standing in blackness once more, but this time, the shadows skittered away from her, unnerved. "No, not her," they screamed, panic evident as they recoiled, scattering like cockroaches into the night. But behind her, the whispers grew louder, filling the void with a newfound fury. "You can't escape. You'll find yourself here again." "Not again," she shouted defiantly, pushing forward into the twisting labyrinth of darkness, the shard blazing bright in her grip. Each step felt charged with electric determination. She had faced the darkness, and though it yielded, it had left behind echoes of its insatiable hunger. The path ahead twisted impossibly, an unfurling tapestry of despair that beckoned her forward. She had to find a way to sever the last ties binding her to this hell. "I want to be yours," she whispered fiercely, glancing over her shoulder as shadows lingered, their eyes glinting like coals. A pulsating dread formed in her gut, but deep down, a nagging fear persisted. What if the darkness wasn't just a part of her? What if it was all that remained? As she ventured deeper, A chill washed over her, a voice as familiar as her own echoed in her mind. Some doors should never be opened. And with that warning, reality warped again, and she found herself in front of a door. Its surface was smooth, polished, and familiar. A single word inscribed across. It glared at her, truth. Could she dare to turn the handle? What lay beyond? The shadows breathed heavier, the air thick with anticipation. Would she find liberation or despair? Her fingers brushed the cool metal, each heartbeat pounding like a drum echoing through the darkness. She paused, gripped by the weight of the moment. What awaited her behind the door? Her fingers trembled against the handle, the cold metal sending a jolt of shock through her. The shadows shifted, their whispers becoming a maddening crescendo. Open it, they urged with a sinister harmony, voices slithering into the corners of her mind. With a stealing breath, Sarah gripped the handle tighter. This is my choice, she muttered, trying to drown out the rising tide of dread. She twisted the handle and pushed the door inward. The creak of the door echoed like a gunshot through the silence of the dark realm. Light spilled out, illuminating a room that felt impossibly warm and inviting. Yet something beneath that surface flickered with malice. Inside, stark white walls were cluttered with mirrors of varying shapes and sizes. Each mirror reflected more than just her image. They were windows into lives she had never lived, choices she never made. Her heart raced as she stepped in, the door closing behind her with a heavy thud that reverberated like a heartbeat. Look closely, the shadows hissed, slinking towards the mirrors with greedy anticipation. See what you could have been. The first mirror showed a version of herself at a celebration, surrounded by laughter, friends, and joy. It was all too perfect, and yet a heaviness settled like lead in her stomach. It was a life she had craved but never fully reached. Another mirror revealed her in a cold, sterile room. A twisted smile etched across her face, a reflection of someone who had succumbed to darkness. That could be you, the shadows taunted. With just a single choice, the visions blurred into a chaotic whirl, and she staggered back, panic rising. It felt as if the mirrors could reach out, grab her, pull her into that alternate reality. She pressed a hand to her chest, feeling her heart thudding like a drum. The shard pulsed in her hand, a weighted reminder of her resolve. Get out, she whispered, but the words barely escaped her lips amid the cacophony of shadows. Stay with us, they begged, voices intertwining as they wrapped around her like creeping vines. You'll find peace, power, fulfillment. No, she screamed. I refuse to be one of you. In a fit of rage, she thrust the shard toward the nearest mirror. It flared to life, light erupting from the jagged edges, splintering the surface of glass. The vision inside warped, convulsing like a trapped soul. The shadows shrieked, their cries mingling with her own pounding heart. Suddenly, the room shifted. The mirrors cracked open, revealing dark caverns behind them. Visions of horrors long buried tumbled forth, memories of betrayal of trust, moments that clung to her heart like ink stains. Face them, a voice from deep within urged, echoing with authority. This is your truth. The floor beneath her quaked, fissures tearing through the ground. The shadows scattered, shrieking and writhing as the cavern began to collapse. You can't leave. You belong with us, they howled, their grips fading, crushed under the weight of her defiance. Sarah stumbled, caught between escape and acceptance. The walls of the room pressed in like a vice, urging her to succumb to the shadowed depths. But there, amidst the crumbling chaos, a glint of light caught her eye. A hidden path opened, illuminated by the vibrant pulse of the shard. She dashed toward it, the ground convulsing in her wake, as screams clawed at her heels. Just as she reached the light, the last sight she turned to catch was her own reflection twisted in agony. Fingers reaching out, begging her to stay, heart pounding. She stepped out into the light, breathless and terrified. What did she escape? What had she unleashed? In the distance, behind her, the whispers began to rise again. Now a low growl growing closer. You can run, but you cannot hide wherever you go. We will find you. Sarah halted, the light dimming as she stood on the precipice of a new reality, one that promised danger, choice, and perhaps a reckoning. What awaited her in this new world beyond the door? As shadows loomed near, fear coiled tight around her throat. She felt an all-too-familiar pulse in her hand. Was time to decide. The light flickered, and shadows pressed in around her. Panic surged as the whispers grew louder, echoing off walls that seemed to pulsate with intent. "We are coming for you," they hissed, each word drenched in vile promises. Sarah's heart raced, and her instincts screamed for her to run. But where? The mall before her, a hollow shell of commerce, was oddly serene. What lay hidden beneath those flickering neon signs and tarnished tiles? She took a hesitant step forward, the shard in her hand radiating warmth for the first time. Felt like a heartbeat, like hope. But shadows writhed and slithered at the edges of her vision, and doubt gnawed at her resolve as she moved deeper into the mall. The stillness of the air wrapped around her like a thick fog. The echoes of long-gone laughter lingered, twisting into a sinister soundtrack. She caught sight of a store, its heavy metal shutters drawn tight. No sign of life. Only that uneasy sensation that someone could be watching, that unseen eyes stared through the cracks of the darkness. "Find me," the whispers beckoned, mocking her, luring her deeper. "You need answers, don't you?" Swallowing hard, Sarah approached the shuttered store. Above it, a faint flicker of light pulsed like a weak heartbeat. In her gut, she knew she had to investigate, but every instinct told her to flee. Gathering courage like a shield, she gripped the shard tight and put a hand on the cold metal shutter. In that moment, an icy current rushed through her. Visions flashed in her mind, echoes of the past, faces of people lost to this place, sacrifices made for a twisted promise. She staggered back, battling the urge to scream. "No," she gasped. "I want to be one of you." The shard pulsed again, sharper, cutting through her fear. It illuminated her surroundings, revealing a small crack within the store's shutter. Heart thumping, she pushed her hand through, forcing the metal apart just enough to peek inside. What she saw sent chills racing down her spine. Dolls lined the shelves, their porcelain faces cracked, yet their eyes glinted with a sinister life. Around them, a makeshift altar sprawled, littered with wilted flowers and photos of people, their faces contorted with either joy or terror. Each image screamed of lost stories. "This isn't right?" she whispered, pulling her head back as her breath caught. Suddenly, a sound broke the silence, a faint scratching, like nails against wood. It came from deep within the store, a hollow echo that seemed to beckon. Help! It was a child's voice, desperate and trembling. A shiver coursed through Sarah. Should she investigate? Was this yet another trap set by the shadows to ensnare her? Yet, the plea echoed in her heart, a call she couldn't ignore. Steeling herself, she pushed further into the store, the shadows following, whispering warnings. As she approached the source of the voice, the air grew heavy, thick with a sense of dread. The shard throbbed in her hand, urging her onward, while those tormenting whispers coiled around her thoughts, weaving doubt into the fabric of her courage. "Turn back," they hissed. "This isn't your fight." Each step felt like walking into the maw of madness. Sarah found herself drawn to a door at the back, half hidden by darkness. Light shone beneath it, flickering like a heartbeat, almost inviting. Would this be the key to understanding the shadows, this cursed legacy? As she reached for the handle, a sudden shriek pierced the air, an unholy roar that echoed longer than it should have. The shadows lunged, claws of darkness snapping at her heels. "Leave now," they screeched. But she was already turning the handle, breath held tight. What lay beyond the door? With a fearful resolve, she pushed it open, the world's weight bearing down. As the door swung wide, a blinding light surged forth, and the whispers fell silent, leaving an eerie stillness in their wake. And then she heard another voice, clear and steady. "You shouldn't have come here." Her body froze. Who stood before her? Was this the truth she sought, or the ultimate deception? Fear rippled through her as she prepared to immerse herself in whatever darkness awaited. The blinding light that erupted from the door immediately diminished as Sarah stepped into the room beyond. It was vast, with high ceilings and walls covered in mirrors that reflected her confusion and fear. The floors gleamed, smooth tiles that felt foreign beneath her trembling feet. In the center, a table lay cluttered with relics of past lives, broken toys, faded photographs, and twisted remnants of laughter long extinguished. "Help us." The voice floated through the room again, sharp as glass, piercing her resolve. Sarah froze, her heart pounding not just from fear, but from a strange blend of determination rising inside her. It felt as though this very room was alive, pulsing with the sorrow and desperation of those entwined in its sorrowful history. "Who are you?" she demanded, her voice resonating off the mirrored walls, echoing back at her like the taunts that crawled ever closer. From the depths of the room emerged a figure, a child. She was small, with wide, haunting eyes that mirrored back Sarah's sorrow. But unlike other children, this girl shimmered, as if caught between two realms, alive yet layered in the shadows of her own demise. "Help us," she repeated, extending a thin hand, fingers trembling. "Tell me what I can do," Sarah cried, feeling the weight of years pressing down, of innocence trapped in turmoil. The child's gaze didn't waver, but a flicker of despair crossed her face. "Find the darkness," she whispered. "Only the truth can set us free." Stirring, Sarah felt the shard in her hand pulse with power, its jagged surface warm against her skin. Was this the key? Could she wield it to vanquish what haunted this place and save those ensnared? With no more time for hesitation, Sarah marched further into the room, her heart racing against the whispers that begged her to turn back. "No," she said firmly, voice resolute. "I won't abandon you." Her footsteps echoed, gathering strength as she moved toward the murky corner of the room, where shadows lingered thick and palpable. "Embrace it," the shadows hissed softly, coaxing her with promises of understanding and power. Pushing through the thick air, the lights began to flicker, and she could see them, the faces of children, twisted and contorted by grief. Their eyes, pools of darkness, searched for respite. "Please, Sarah. Help us. Show me the truth," she screamed, the shard in her grip lighting up, illuminating her path through the darkness. The shadows writhed, shrieking in a cacophony of voices, trying to drown her resolve. "Face it." With that defiant roar, she plunged the shard into the ground, the impact sending tremors resonating through the chamber. Light erupted, slicing through the terror, shattering the shadows and revealing the true horror of the past. Visions unfurled before her, the air crackling with energy, the mall as it once was, filled with joyful laughter, vibrant colors, and the joyful innocence of children at play, all overshadowed by the lurking darkness they never escaped. She saw them smiling, and it filled her with sorrow, a sorrow that coiled into anger at the forsaken legacy that left them trapped forever. "Join us. You belong here," the shadows hissed, but Sarah felt only rage, the conviction surging through her as she fought against the tide of despair. "No more," she shouted, channeling every ounce of her strength into the shard once more. She wouldn't be part of the darkness that preyed upon the lost. She would be their champion. With a final scream, she pressed the shard deeper into the earth, and a beam of pure light surged around the room, exploding forth and swallowing the night whole. The shadows cried and shrieked, disintegrating before the brilliance, as the faces of the lost children transformed from agony to relief. "Thank you," the child replied softly, fading into the light. "You set us free." The room shimmered, crumbling away into a haze of warmth as reality slipped, leaving Sarah standing alone in the mall, now vibrant and alive. The lights around her sparkled brightly, devoid of the heaviness that had plagued her for so long. Breathless, she felt an overwhelming sense of peace. The wandering souls had found their way home. She had become their savior without becoming lost herself. In her chest, a warmth blossomed, a gentle reminder of her own strength. With the shard now dull and lifeless in her hands, Sarah understood the darkness would always be a part of her, but it was her choice whether she let it define her. As she moved toward the entrance, sunlight streamed into the mall, glistening against the floor. It wrapped around her like a protective embrace. For the first time in a long time, she felt hopeful and free, ready to embrace a future unshackled from shadows. Her heart swelled with the knowledge that she had faced her darkest fears and emerged victorious. And then she left, stepping into the light, leaving the mall and its haunting memories behind for good, knowing she would carry the children's freedom like a badge of honor into her new life. And with the dawn's first light breaking over the horizon, she swore to never forget the truth again. You need to subscribe now, so you don't miss the next exclusive stories that dive into the depths of our fears and hopes. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm, showing your love to this channel. Flood the comments section with your reactions about this ending. We want to hear every reaction, theory, and thought. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this conclusion with you. Don't wait even one more second to share this. True fans understand the thrill of supporting this channel,